sitting well in first place with their 8th generation console, Sony really needs to continue to push the envelope with regards to their exclusives and their VR offerings. Today I'd like to take a look at the things that Sony needs to do at E3 to truly impress me. Hello there, I'm Musty Hobbit, and there's nothing that a Hobbit loves more than another helping of Second Breakfast. Welcome back. And this time last year, going into the E3, I had very little reason to even care about what Sony was bringing to the table. I didn't yet have a PS4, and VR was something that just wasn't an interest to me at the time. As of September, that has all changed. I acquired a PS4 Pro and now more recently a PSVR, so I am very invested and interested to see what Sony is going to bring to the table and what they are going to be putting in front of us for the years ahead. So going into E3, this is what Sony has said they will have at their press conference. So Sony has indicated they'll be focusing exclusively on their 4 major releases: Spider-Man, Death Stranding, Ghost of Tsushima, and The Last of Us 2. In addition, there will be an assortment of indie and third-party announcements. In addition, there have been some blog posts as recent as today detailing hands-on impressions and trailers for 6 new PSVR titles, including Creed Rise to Glory and Astrobot Rescue Mission. Now, it'll be interesting to see how Sony manages their time, given where they are placed among all of the other press conferences. The only other company that's going out after them is Nintendo, so I would anticipate that while there will probably be some third-party releases and/or announcements that happen on stage at Sony, I believe that Bethesda, Square Enix, and Ubisoft are going to prioritize the big reveals on their own stages, and so likely won't put those in front of the Sony crowd. So that's what they've told us. Here's what I, the average PS4 gamer who has adopted PSVR, needs to see out of Sony this E3. In previous years, Sony has done orchestra-driven presentations or stage performances that end up pulling the cameras away from what is important, the trailers and the gameplay itself. Do you remember the people hanging from the ceiling during the Days Gone presentation? You would think that you're watching a Tool concert. I'd like to see them tighten things up here and maximize the time that they have on stage. You know, I get that stage stuff enhances things for the people present at the show, but for an audience of a couple thousand versus an audience of millions, I feel like you need to ensure that your biggest crowd is getting the biggest benefit out of your presentation style. Gameplay demonstrations for the 4 games that they have announced. I definitely want to see significant gameplay demonstrations of those 4 games. And not just cinematic trailers. I think at this point in this stage, if you are going to commit this type of time to only 4 titles, you really should give big gameplay loops, as they did in previous years. Now, I do also want to see release dates on 3 of the 4 of those titles, and yes, I will count Spider-Man as one of those titles, given that that has been announced for September. Now, I'm less concerned about which titles actually come out in 2018. I just want to know some more definitive time so I can start planning for these big exclusive titles, because that is what Sony is all about these days. At the same time, I want Sony to reveal something new. I don't want them to just stick to the marching orders here and only show those 4 exclusives. I want to see at least 1, if not 2, first-party reveals. And E3 tends to bring you 2 styles of reveal, right? You get the stuff that is years away, your Final Fantasy VII remakes, your Shenmues, and then you get the stuff that's coming out imminently, which is kind of the approach that Sony's taking this year. I'd like to get an idea of what 6 months to 24 months looks like for the roadmap here. I mean, what's on the horizon for next holiday, right? Even if we just get some light announcements with a logo or something along the lines of what Nintendo has done with Metroid Prime 4, I think that's fine. I think we need to start knowing what it is that is coming so that we know that there's not going to be a dead period over the next couple of years. I expect, and I feel like this is a foregone conclusion, a DLC announcement for God of War and a complete edition. I feel like it really needs to take that Horizon Zero Dawn approach. We had a game that was released earlier in the calendar year. This is a great way to bolster holiday sales by getting out a full edition with all of that DLC. So I fully expect that there are some areas in God of War that are perfect for extra exploring. I wouldn't be opposed to spending more time in Midgard. As far as PSVR goes, this is Sony's strategic differentiator, and it's something that they really need to start to back with big first-party AAA software. Now, they have announced that Dreams will have PSVR support on day one, and that's excellent, but we need to understand what that really means. If that is just a portion, I think that if Project Spark is any indication, a creation software is something that isn't going to necessarily have mass appeal. It depends on how user-friendly it is and how much it actually gets adopted by people to really drive how well a game like Dreams would sell. But to this point, the best implementations of PSVR on a AAA scale have been done by third parties, and they've been baked into games that were already in production and either have been adjusted a little bit to support VR, and this has been Capcom's instance with Resident Evil 7, and for Bethesda with both Doom VFR and Skyrim VR. But I think Sony needs to take this opportunity and really put its money where its mouth is with PSVR and double down with some, I would say, at least 2 big first-party titles. And whether that's an implementation of VR in one of these 4 big releases, you could potentially see a VR mode in Spider-Man. There already is an experience that they have, but I would like to see a larger gameplay implementation with VR. And unfortunately, we don't know what Death Stranding or Ghost of Tsushima looks like just yet, so envisioning what a VR environment would be for those games is kind of difficult. What potentially I could see happen is, as a way to boost sales of Detroit Become Human, would be to add a VR mode. Even so, at the same time, games like Moss and Bound have also given us indication and proof that a game in third person can still have VR applications, so I wouldn't rule out anything getting VR support. And I should also acknowledge that I wouldn't want these PSVR announcements to be an afterthought. I don't want them to get buried in the pre-show. I feel like these need to be a portion of the main show, as most of them were last year. But again, my perspective is a little bit different going into this year's E3, to where that section of the show actually means a lot more than it did last year. As far as hardware talk goes, a lot of executives at Sony have been very vocal over the past couple of days, indicating that the PS4 is entering its last stage of its life cycle. So essentially, it's late adulthood at this point, which is a time for excellent games to be released. So Sony, don't make a peep about PS5 in your presentation this year. I feel like it would shoot yourself in the foot and delay any further growth of your platform, which has already sold so well. But I feel like trying to push in that direction and not just selling reasons to upgrade, reasons to go after the PSVR hardware, I feel like if you're going to do anything, you need to push in that direction and not push into the next generation. It is not time yet. You've already said that there are years left on the PS4's life. Let's pump the brakes. Let's wait on that stuff. This is not the year for that. So there you have it. It's not going to take a lot for Sony to impress me here, but I feel like they need to accomplish at least most of what I've indicated here for me to feel good about Sony's presentation this E3. So over the next 2 weeks leading up to E3, I'll be doing a similar video for both Nintendo and Microsoft. So if that seems like something that would be very interesting to you, why don't you go ahead and subscribe? And if you did like the video, please like it so that I know that you do. In addition, I wanted to announce that the Cartridge Club will be doing a live recap of each of the 8 major press conferences taking place on Saturday through Tuesday of E3 week. And you'll want to be there for those recaps. It's going to be a blast. We have a lot of very, very passionate people about modern games and the companies that are presenting them, and we want to have you there to join us in the discussion. So if you are on board for that, you should go over to twitch.tv/Cartridge Club and follow that channel there. That's the definitive spot where we'll have it, although we are going to look to co-stream to YouTube as well, but you'll want to be there. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. I hope to see you back for another Second Breakfast sometime soon, but for now, I have been Musty. Take care of yourself, be good to each other. Bye.